Hey guys, Tisha here, and we are back for the second part of chapter 1 from the book Love Times 3. Let me apologize yesterday for my abrupt departure, but I did not realize how long I had been reading, and I had something to do pronto. So I apologize for the way I left, but I am going to make sure that we finish this chapter. We are still talking about a peculiar people, and we left off hearing from Valerie. So, Aunt S had two daughters, one younger and one older than Vicky and me. We were a little foursome, constantly moving between the two homes for playtime and sleepovers. We played house and make believe we were married to the Beatles. Paul Paul was always the first one we put dibs on as a husband. George was the last. Our favorite activity was making up skits and performing them for our parents. My dad liked country singer Slim Whitman, whose version of Una Paloma Blanca was a favorite. So we once made up a play about that song. One of us even dressed as a bird, wings flapping as we sang Una Paloma Blanca. I'm just a bird in the sky, Una Paloma Blanca. Over the mountains I fly. No one can take my freedom away. My dad loved our little show. Our elementary school had a policy of putting twins in different classes. We had a set of twins when I was in middle school, and they didn't have any classes together either. So I wonder if that was a thing at several schools. Our mom went along with it, but she later regretted that decision. Vicky and I ended up having different friends and teachers and probably missed out on a lot of fun twin experiences and pranks. Aunt S children went to the same school we did, so I always had siblings in the grades ahead and behind me. We all had the same last name, of course, which led some of my more sensitive siblings to tell classmates we were cousins. My dad, in his gentle way, let it be known that he didn't approve. The truth was, we were all brothers and sisters, and he thought we should be proud of it. I like the fact that their father did not want them to hide who they were, because we've been told so often that a lot of these parents wanted these kids to hide it, and they were taught very early on that it was okay to lie to the monogamous world. So to hear her say that her father didn't like the siblings lying and saying that they were cousins has me saying, okay, Dad, that's good. My parents never sat me down and said, now, honey, you're not going to tell anybody about Dad, right? So I never thought to keep my family a secret. When I was in 5th grade, though, I heard two of my sisters from different mothers talking about whether certain people knew about our family. They probably do, one sister said. Everybody knows. How do they know? I never tell anybody. I never tell a soul, the other sister said. A classmate had just asked me if my parents were polygamous. And without any hesitation, I had given her the details, from how many mothers I had to how we lived in separate houses. But I kept my mouth shut about that earlier conversation, and I listened to my sisters talk. Sensing trouble, I realized it was best not to be so forthcoming about my family. In grade school, I attended religion classes at the local LDS church, which was always very welcoming to my family, even though we were not members. My parents thought the exposure was harmless since most teachings were in line with our own beliefs. I love learning all the primary level songs. I am a child of God. Jesus wants me for a sunbeam. I know that one. Popcorn popping on the apricot tree. I don't know that. I'm sure most of our neighbors knew about my family lifestyle. They could see us going back and forth between the two houses and knew we didn't attend services on Sundays. They were polite but kept their distance. But as I got older, I found it easier and safer to make friends with people who lived farther away. I wanted my friends to know me as a person first before I told them about my family or invited them to my house. Although my moms lived in different houses, there were always so many kids coming and going that there was no way to hide our connection. But breaking the news wasn't easy. I can't imagine how that felt growing up, to have to feel like you had to hide that part of you out of fear. I remember growing up and being a Seventh-day Adventist, which is a form of Christianity where you worship from sunset Friday to sunset Saturday, which meant a lot of events I could not attend, like the school prom and the Friday night football games and the basketball games that were during the afternoon and things of that nature, because that was worship time. And I remember how embarrassed I was sometimes to have to tell people that. And that isn't even that big of a deal. So I can only imagine how these kids felt, having to feel like they had to hide who their family was along with their belief. But as I got older, I found it easier and safer to make friends with people who live farther away. I wanted my friends to know me as a person first before I told them about my family or invited them to my house. Although my moms lived in different houses, there were always so many kids coming and going that there was no way to hide our connection. But breaking the news wasn't easy. I have something to tell you about my family, I told a friend one day. What is it? She asked. It's kind of hard to say, so I'm going to write it down on a piece of paper, I told her. I then handed her the slip. She sounded out the words, polygamous. What's that? Well, my dad has more than one wife, and there are lots and lots of kids in our family, I said. She didn't care about my family, as it turned out. Neither did my best friend, Mindy, who was Catholic. She and her mother had moved to a mostly Mormon neighborhood after her parents divorced. The neighbors welcomed them with cakes and pies at first, but shunned Mindy and her mom after learning they weren't Mormon. With this sort of discrimination as a common bond between us, Mindy was very accepting of my family. I hate the fact that people get treated differently because of their beliefs. Y'all are all supposed to be Christians, but you're shunning them because they're not this one branch of Christianity. But there were times I was directly confronted with the distaste some people had for our lifestyle. I had moved away from home when someone spray painted the words "polygamous bitches" on the driveway of my parents' home, and even fouler words all over a car parked there. My mom wanted to report the vandalism to the police, but my dad said no. He got some gray cement paint and, with the help of my younger sister, scrubbed and painted over the graffiti. We never talked about it again. It's so distasteful, man. I hate. I do. I really hate. Like, I've said it before, love could get us so much further in tolerance. We don't have to always agree with the things that people choose to do, but just learn to, just tolerate it. If it's not something that somebody's doing to you, what does it matter? Just saying. Our high school had so many students and such a diverse population that Vicky and I just blended in. I got a job working at a taco restaurant in a nearby mall, and then during the summers at a medical supply company. My dad's rule was that if you didn't have a job, you did chores at home to contribute to the family. If you worked, you gave some of your paycheck, $40, or half of the sum, whichever was less, to your mom. It was his way of preparing us to be responsible and self-sufficient. We all did it, and none of us resented it. I still had plenty of money left to spend on clothes and hairstyles and fun activities. My first job, I was 16, and I had to pay my cell phone bill and give my mom gas money because, no, I wasn't 16. I'm lying. I was 17. 16 or 17, because I graduated from high school and I was 17. So one of the two. Okay, maybe I'm not lying. But I did have to give my mom gas money because she drove me to work. I still had plenty of money left to spend on clothes and hairstyles and fun activities. I was into the new wave style. I wore wild clothes and always had different hairstyles, once cutting my hair short and bleaching it with hydrogen peroxide so that it turned an orangey blonde. I did hydrogen peroxide on my hair before too, and it did not turn blonde. It was just a little bit lighter brown, but it did not turn blonde. Vicky didn't go as crazy as I did. Vicky and I love going to dances put on by one of the organized fundamentalist churches. The dances often went until midnight, but for us, being teenagers, that was usually not the end of the night. One evening after a dance, we headed back to our friend Michelle's house to change from our dresses into jeans before going to a late night restaurant to get something to eat. Vicky was driving her mom's station wagon along a windy gravel road that skirted a canal and then sharply veered as it crossed over the water. The road was hard to see in the dark, and Vicky realized too late that we were at the curve. She swerved and the station wagon slid. In an instant, the car was upside down in the canal, with just the back end, undercarriage, and tires poking out of the water. Oh, goodness. None of us were wearing a seatbelt, which in that instance was probably fortunate. As I tried to orient myself, I could feel the water rising. That is one of my fears, y'all, is going over a bridge or something in the water. It is like, I would hate that. I also could hear Michelle screaming and yelling, Vicky calling out, don't panic, don't panic. The water covered my face and I began to flail my arms. My hand had brushed to the door handle, allowing me to get my bearings, and the next thing I knew, the door was open. Gratefully, I slipped through it. Vicky had climbed out her window. It had been open while we crashed and was standing next to the car, calling Michelle's name. I had no idea how many minutes had passed. All I could do was think that Michelle had been trapped in the car and had drowned. Suddenly, Vicky asked, did you hear that? A sound like a meowing of a cat was coming from the back of the station wagon. We waded through the chest-deep water, holding on to the car for balance. As we reached the back, we finally made out the sound. It was Michelle calling, help, help. The back hatch had flipped open, and we could see Michelle's head poking out above the water. We pulled her free and climbed up the canal bank to the road. Oh, thank goodness. Michelle was in shock and wasn't sure which way led her to her house, so we just started walking. We were soaked and shoeless, the high heels we had worn to the dance lost in the chaos. We walked for a few minutes before we spotted a house illuminated by its porch light. Safe. We were so happy, but Michelle cried out, no, 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 we don't want to go to that house. They aren't nice to polygamists. Vicky and I were bewildered. We needed help and couldn't imagine that our family background mattered at that moment. We couldn't tell if Michelle's fear was real or due to shock, so we kept walking. She was right about the family. We learned that later. Finally, another house emerged out of the darkness. We knocked on the door and an older couple answered. They ushered us inside, wrapped us in blankets, and let us call our parents. The loss of the car may have been a hardship, but my parents never chewed us out. They were just relieved that we hadn't been hurt. As any parents would have. That is scary. The woman who helped us turned out to be a collector of porcelain dolls, which she displayed in her front room. A week or so after the incident, my mom paid the couple a visit, and as a thank you for their kindness that night, gave the woman a doll she had made. The fact that we survived the accident, we weren't even cut or bruised, seemed miraculous to me. I could not have opened that car door under my own power, given the force of the water pressing against it. That's a point. My guardian angel was there, protecting me, and I felt that I had been spared for a reason. Life was such a blessing, and I was determined to get mine on the right track and find my greater purpose. Okay. All right. That was good. Okay. Let me do Vicky's. Vicky. When we were very young, Valerie and I shared a bedroom with an older sister who used her big sister status to always make us clean it up. But I didn't care. I never wished for my own bedroom. I loved having sisters to help decorate our rooms and to talk to as we drifted off to sleep at night. Most of my friends had their own rooms and everything else they wanted, but no one to share it with. That didn't seem like much fun to me. I never had to share a room. Like ever. Only time I shared a room was in the summertime. And that was because all of us first cousins would be at my grandmother's house. So where we all gonna go? So some of us were in the same room. When I first heard the term latchkey kids in elementary school, I had to have it explained to me. It broke my heart to imagine some of my classmates going home to empty house day after day. My mom mostly worked from home, so either she or my older siblings were there when we returned from school. Our house was rarely empty, and I never felt alone or bored. I was so excited each time my mom or one of my other two mothers had a new baby that I could sit for hours holding my newest sibling. I love babysitting for my moms too. When my baby brother was 2, I begged my mom to have another one, but after 16 children, she was done. I still can't imagine having to have that many babies. 16 babies. That means she was pregnant at least 16 years of her life. As the only twins in the family at the time, Val and I were quite the novelty. She and I loved to sing, and it drove everyone else crazy because we sang everything we heard. Television jingles, the Brady Bunch theme song, children's church songs. Our siblings called us the same nickname, Twinner. But by junior high, our distinct personalities really took shape, and I didn't like being referred to as if we were part of a single person. Val and I were very competitive with each other, though my mother did her best to help us be close. I cannot wait to hear about how these sisters became okay with sharing the same man, with being married to the same man. That is a little strange to me, but we're going to keep reading. My family didn't have a lot of money, but we had plenty of homespun good times. In the summer, running through the sprinklers or swimming in 55-gallon drum fills with water from the garden hose was as much fun as a trip to the public pool. The sprinklers were a good time. Kids nowadays just really don't realize like some of the things that we got to do. I mean, yeah, my son goes to the pool and stuff like that, but I don't think my son ever played in sprinklers or the little water slide thing that's in the backyard. I don't recall any of that. At least he didn't do it with me. Maybe he did it with his pop or something like that, but it wasn't a thing that I did with him. Birthdays were the same for every child every year. Our parents would give us $5 bill and let us choose what flavor of homemade ice cream to make in the hand-cranked freezer. Val and I would collaborate so that we got a double variety of flavors. My picks were usually strawberry banana, orange pineapple, or chocolate Oreo cookie. It was awkward when friends would ask what I got for my birthday. That's all they say when I told them, but I thought it was plenty. My dad hated to travel, but that didn't stop my mom from taking us on trips. When I was 7, she saved enough money to take us to southern Utah to see our cousins in Short Creek and then on to the Grand Canyon. My mother also took us to Lava Hot Springs in Idaho for a reunion with my maternal grandmother's side of the family. Ours was the only polygamous family in attendance, but we still were welcome, as they should have been. It took time for me to realize my family was different. In 4th grade, our lesson on Utah history included an explanation of polygamy, and my teacher, Miss Smith, didn't make it sound like such a bad thing. I didn't yet understand the need to be discreet when talking about my family, so I raised my hand. My grandpa was a polygamist. Sorry, I'm just picturing it like, I got something to say. My grandpa was a polygamist. I said proudly when Mrs. Smith called on me. She smiled, nodded her head, and kept on with the lesson. No one seemed alarmed. Mrs. Smith said a few more things that to me made polygamy sound pretty good. So I raised my hand again, and I was going to tell her that my dad was a polygamist. This is the thing that I love about kids. Sometimes they have no filter and it leads to the best moments. This This time, Mrs. Smith, who knew about my family, wisely ignored me. By the next year, my family background wasn't anything I wanted to admit at school, let alone in public. One day at recess, a boy asked me about my family. Are you a polygamist? He asked. No, I said. True, I wasn't. Is your dad a polygamist? He then asked. This made me nervous. No, I lied. We went on playing, but I felt guilty about the fib for years. I bumped into this classmate at my 20th high school reunion and apologized for lying about my dad. He didn't remember our playground exchange, but it felt good to get that little lie off of my chest. For our 14th birthday, Val and I had planned a big party with our family friends who were fundamentalist Mormons and some of our classmates. It turned out to be a very awkward gathering. We hadn't realized how hard it would be for the groups to mix or for us to split up our time between them. My parents didn't really care who knew about our family and never pressured us about religion. They gave us a lot of freedom when it came to making decisions, from music to clothes and later marriage. My mom let my brothers grow their hair long and deflected criticism from her sisters by telling them, I let my boys wear their hair however they want because pretty soon it will be gone. Enjoy it while you got it. But even with all that freedom, my parents still had a way of letting me know when I'd made a bad choice. One day, I was running late for school when my dad called me to join the family's morning prayers. I don't have time, I shouted back, irritated. My dad gave me a look that was a perfect mixture of disappointment and sorrow. We'll say a prayer for you, he said quietly. I've never forgotten the shame I felt in that moment or his message. It's so amazing how parents can make us feel so badly about deciding not to come and do something with them. Like, not to say, is it important for you to have like bonding time with your family? Yes. But why does she have to be made to feel bad about not coming to morning prayers? Could she not have done morning prayers by herself? Did she have to do it with the family? I'm just playing devil's advocate. I was a sober child, and I admit a goody-goody. I would constantly tattle on my siblings, so much so that my mother actually got after me for it. Yeah, the parents don't like that, and neither do your siblings. I always wanted to do what was right, and I wanted everyone else to live up to my standards. My parents were good and faithful people, and I admired them for it. I was shocked as a teenager to learn that not all of my siblings and friends felt the same way about our culture and upbringing. I loved everything about my parents and their lifestyle. By high school, I was studying, meditating, and praying a lot about the kind of life I wanted. A big family? Definitely. Plural marriage? Yes. I knew in my heart and soul that the right opportunity would come along. I only had to wait. And that is the end of chapter 1. Sorry, I was looking at chapter 2 and I was right. That's the end of chapter 1. I'm going to make sure that when I do the next chapter read that I break it up better than I did this one, because I read several pages before I kind of stopped. But I will say that I kind of went into this the wrong way, that the book seems to already be picking up. I like that we're hearing more about their childhood because it's kind of allowing us to see this family from the beginning, maybe to by the time that they get to their marriages and stuff like that. Let me know down below your thoughts and make sure you like the video. If you have been here more than once, why haven't you subscribed? I'm on the road to 1,000 people, and it is going to happen sooner than later. No, seriously, it really is going to happen sooner than later. I don't think I've said it in one of these book reviews, but thank you so much for subscribing. My numbers are rising, and I'm seeing in the comment section people who said that they're so happy that they found the videos because they were unfamiliar with me and things of that nature. And that is because of people like you who are watching right now. So thank you so much. I seriously mean it. It means more to me than you'll ever know. Until next time.